All right, I'm here with Dr. Jeffery Young, and of course he's gonna be the Young Earth guy because your last name is Young, right?
How appropriate.
Yes, you have to be that guy. So as you know, we're doing a little series on God's creation. So we did Old Earth last week. We're doing Young Earth this week. And then next week, Jackson Greer is going to give us a church history lesson on what did the early church, what did our church fathers all think about creation, the age of it, and also what it meant, and material, immaterial, all those kind of things. That's going to be next week. So definitely tune in. So, Jeffrey, I just went to Google, okay, and I asked a question: how old is the Earth? And so I actually have the answer. Okay. And so the Earth is thought to be about, so there's some gray area, you know. So Google's not like this is hard fact. It says 4.54 billion years old. So that's Google. So so we'll start there. Obviously, I would say you are going to disagree with that. Do you believe the Earth is 4.45 billion years old?
The short answer is no. I'm sorry. I have to disagree with the wisdom of the consensus of the day that
Okay.
Google's going to display.
Yeah, I like that. And that's why we want you on here. So last week we got, Jimmy Slack. Hey, he believes that's a reasonable dating of the Earth. Now, we don't have the Earth's birthday. I looked in Genesis 1. There's not a birthday. There's not a date. So we are looking at the Hebrew Scriptures, written some, 3,500 years ago, probably, by Moses. And, he's not writing in the same backdrop that we have. He doesn't have evolutionary, biology. He doesn't have carbon dating. And so we're probably asking different questions than his original audience would have asked.
Sure.
But it is our time, and we are curious. And as we've tried to say, hey, this is not a first-tier issue. This is something that we can all disagree about. And what I do want to remind us, we don't say, well, old Earth people don't believe the Bible. I think Jimmy Slack really believes the Bible, and I think his points come from the Scriptures. What we have is different interpretations of the Bible, of the Scripture. So I'm going to say, hey, Jeffrey, I think you believe the Bible. I think Jimmy believes the Bible. Both of you are looking at the Bible and perhaps the world and having a different interpretation of those things. So what we're going to get into today is your interpretation of Genesis 1, how Jesus views creation, how you believe science points to a young earth versus old earth. So I'd love for you to start out and just give us your case for why you believe the world is. Maybe tell us first how old you think the earth is, and then
Okay.
give us a case for why you think that.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Obviously, my first caveat is I am far from an expert on this.
I thought you were a doctor.
Well, that means different things to different people, but yes, I am an economist. I'm not a geologist. I'm not a
Yes.
physicist. I did love physics. I loved it so much I took it twice in college.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
Take that for whatever you think. But no, this is a curiosity of mine, certainly.
Yeah.
I would estimate. Thing is, I actually did the math back in high school. I was homeschooled, and part of my curriculum was Bible study.
Yeah.
And just as an exercise, I don't know that I did this for extra credit or anything, but I added up the ages of this person when he was born, who he fathered, how old he was when he fathered him, and so on and so forth, and actually drew out a timeline.
And that's from the genealogies,
From the genealogies
in Genesis.
In Genesis.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then trying to make that or reconcile that with anything else we're given throughout the Old Testament or anything like that. So kind of sketched a timeline like people do with the Star Wars timeline or the Marvel Cinematic Universe timeline. And I don't remember the exact number. That paper is probably decomposed into something else in a landfill by now. But I arrived somewhere between 6,000 and 6,100 years, which is certainly in the ballpark of what most young earthers would estimate.
Okay.
And so that is taking a literal 6-day creation. A year really means a year.
Okay.
A day means a day.
Okay.
Etc. Adding that up, you will get 6,000 and some odd years, roughly.
Okay.
or at least 4,000 and something up to the point of Christ, and then tacking on another 2,000 plus years on there.
Yeah.
There's room for error, of
Okay.
course.
Okay.
I'm not a theologian,
Yes.
but I love my Bible. I love.
Hey, this is the Love Your Bible podcast, so
and
that's good.
and
I like that you love your Bible.
well, hell, the podcast has helped with that, actually.
Yeah.
So thank you for that.
Yeah.
And I will say that's another caveat. Yeah, sure, I'm not an expert, but also, if I fumble this so badly that I scare young earthers into being old earthers by the end of this, but it drives them to read their Bible, praise God.
Yeah.
That is mission accomplished.
Amen.
I am not trying to win people over to me. I am trying to win people over to him.
Absolutely.
That's the goal here.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good point. So you've went through the history of man, and I would say probably young Earth, old Earth wouldn't have probably a lot of disagreement on how old the history of man is. They would probably have a lot of disagreement on what is the history before man. And so, you brought up this idea of reading a day is a day and a year is a year.
Mm-hmm.
So that is, from what I see, a lot of disagreement over that word day in the scriptures.
Oh, yes.
So I'd love for you to give your case for why you see Genesis 1 as, as 6 24-hour days rather than perhaps a season of time or a period of time. So I'd love for you to just walk us through your understanding of that.
Well, I've seen different arguments supporting that. Like I say, I'm not an expert, so I haven't read every book and listened to every seminar disseminating people's extensive knowledge as to how to translate that Hebrew word yom, right?
Yeah.
In some instances, it does mean longer than a 24-hour period. The days of Elijah, the day of the Lord, the day of judgment, back in the day of King David, etc. Those uses of the word yom are prefaced with nouns or adjectives. The day of King David, right? It's talking about the day and age, the life and times of a person.
Mm-hmm.
The issue with my very limited study and with other people's extensive study that hold my view of a younger Earth, it's older than I am, but younger relative to other arguments, is that when that word is preceded or conjoined with a number, the first day or day one or 3 days, etc., there are no instances of it meaning something other than an actual day. And that's certainly what we see in Genesis 1.
Yeah.
The first day, morning and evening, viewing, sunrise to sunset. This is that day.
Okay.
And it's preceded by a number.
Yeah.
An ordinal number in that case. First day, second day, etc.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really good, and you'd probably say if you're just picking up Genesis and reading through it, that's going to probably be your takeaway, right? You would probably read through and be like, oh, well, these are, if you knew nothing about science or other arguments, oh, this seems like these are just days. Would that be correct?
Yeah, taking scripture at face value, you read that and say, all right, well, if I trust the translators who have, done their work for the past several centuries, putting it into words that I can understand, then what I read tells me that, these are days. Obviously, there's context. Context is very important. And I do want to point out is that there's a decision to be made, regardless of which side you fall on during this episode or in general.
Yeah.
With how you interpret the creation narrative. There's a decision to be made of how much you will allow yourself to believe about what it says. And I don't mean, people on the other side of the argument don't believe what the Bible says, but as far as what you are limiting the words to mean.
Okay.
In terms of, all right, how much are you going to read into it, or are you working with the presupposition that it must mean something else because a bunch of people at some university who don't believe the Bible anyway say that it cannot be that young. It cannot be that short of a time period. But there's more to dig into there anyway with
Yeah.
that. So
Yeah, no,
just
that
as an
makes sense.
aside, is there's a decision to be made of, well, at some point or another, you're going to have to believe, where is that line for you? Where's the line? But
Yeah. No, I think that's good. And I feel like with, as a seminary student who has taken both Hebrew and Greek, one of the things through both of those language studies, first of all, you realize you have to dedicate your life to one of these languages to really master them and to really know
absolutely,
them. And so, what I took away with both of those classes is wow, our Bible translators are really smart and they've given their lives to this, and the words they use in English, they're probably the best words available to us.
better than I
So
could do.
for sure. And so whenever and this is a temptation in preaching. You find a verse and then you look up a word study on this particular word, and you're like, oh, actually, it's cooler if it says this. And it's like, oh, I could do a lot of gymnastics to tell people why this word actually means. And it's like, well, more than likely, it means what the committee who researched this that knows the language, they chose this word over that word because all words have a range of meaning. And
Absolutely,
just because
especially
they
in
have
English.
a range of meaning doesn't mean there's another word in that range that better fits with the actual verse itself. So I do know that in just Bible, so those of you who love your Bible, when you look up a Greek word or Hebrew word and you're like, oh, well, this is a cool translation. Well, there's probably reason the writers chose the specific word in English because it better fits with the context, the syntax, history, all of the literature that they know. That's why they chose that word. So I do think there's a case to be made of our English Bibles have day rather than season because it's probably the most logical reading that Moses' audience would have thought day rather than season. So I think you
Yes.
could argue that point. But I do think to my old earth people, there is wiggle room. So if you read that as season or period of time, there's definitely room for that view too. So it's not that one is right, one's a heretic. It's there's different interpretation of these words, different interpretation of what's going on, and so that's why we're having both these episodes. Like one says a season, one says a day. But Jeffrey, in your position, you see this as 24-hour days. Would that be right? In the
I do, but I also agree that there could be wiggle room with interpretation. I just have not been sufficiently persuaded yet
yeah,
to accept the wiggle room
yeah,
and abandon my default,
yeah,
because the 24-hour day is the default position. That's the base case,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so
And so
I'm
tell me about the morning and evening. How do you see that as helping the case for these are days, not seasons?
well, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's how days would have been observed by Moses' audience.
Mm-hmm.
The new day would begin at sundown, which
Yes.
is why, to observe the Sabbath, you'd have to have all your work done before the sun goes down.
Yes.
Ditto for after Jesus died on the cross, they had to have his body taken down and put into the tomb
Yes.
and prepared before the sun went down because of observing Sabbath. So to that audience, evening would mark the beginning of the next day. And morning is, when you get up, the sun is rising, it's time to go to work, assuming it's not the Sabbath.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay, gotta throw that in there.
Yeah.
And so that seems to describe a day in the sense that Moses' audience would have understood a day to be. Morning and evening was such and such a day. Evening begins the next day.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. So I would love to know um, what about the sun? This has been a curiosity of mine. So I would just love to get your take on like when is the sun created? Is my first question. And then how does the sun fit into these 24-hour days? Does that make sense? So let's start with when do you
Yes.
think the sun was created by God?
Well, the word sun is not necessarily used in this narrative.
True. Yeah.
It says, the greater light
Yeah.
rules the day, the lesser light rules the night. But it also says, like, at the very beginning, but this is a complete rabbit trail. Maybe we'll get to it, maybe we won't. God also created time
Yeah.
at the beginning.
Okay.
He's not bound by something he made.
Okay.
But at time equals 0,
Okay.
God separated the light from the darkness.
Okay.
Right? Then the darkness he called night, the light he called day.
Yes.
Maybe that's the sun. But then again, you have Revelation 21, 22 that says, there's no need for the sun in the new heaven and in the new earth.
Yeah.
God's glory is light.
Yeah.
There's light. You don't
Yeah.
need the sun if you've got God's glory. That is a better light. It's a purer light.
In John 1, Jesus is the light of the world. He's the light of men.
Yes,
so
that's
you
right,
have that
the light
kind of
of men.
connection, which goes right back to Genesis 1, where in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. And then right in that, he's light.
That's
And
right.
so-
That's exactly right. So is that talking about the sun, or is it saying, well, if God was there in the beginning, God's glory is light. Okay, well, Jesus, the light, was there too, we're told. I don't know, in short.
Okay.
And I'm going to try and keep the I don't knows to a minimum
Yeah.
in here. But one thing about me is I am not afraid to say I don't know.
Absolutely.
I would rather that than improvise a very bad answer.
Yeah.
So it could be on day 1. It could be later on when it mentions, is it day 3 or 4? When it says the greater
Day
light,
4.
Day 4
Yeah.
Ruled the day, and the lesser light ruled the night.
Yeah. So I think if you have, I guess my thought would be, if there is no sun or moon, or they're not as signs and seasons quite yet, how the people perceive them, it seems to me our lunar day, is the sun. Obviously, we have sunset, sunrise, those things. Which the sun's not going around us; we're going around the sun, but that would be a time marker of 24-hour days. So if day 1, day 2, and day 3, we're not really aware of the sun or the moon yet, then there wouldn't be necessarily a timestamp for those days. Would that be correct? Is that I guess one argument that I would say maybe, okay, these aren't literal days because there's not a sun and a moon revolving yet until day 4. So I'm just curious on what you would have thoughts on that, on how do you get morning and evening if there's not sun yet or moon yet?
Well, and that's a very good question, actually, and I've given that some thought.
Yeah.
Not saying I have the answer, but basically where I've arrived at this point is, if there's no sun or moon, what's the point in having day and night? And also, if there was no sun and the light came from God's presence, then darkness would mean the light is gone and God's presence was taken away. What's the point of that?
Pretty strange.
Yeah, that's a bit odd.
Yeah.
So I guess, there could be a case for that of, then the sun was there.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah, and so I know, and I was talking to Jimmy last week, which I know you said, just to let everybody know, Jeffrey has not listened to that episode yet. He wanted to not have any information before this one. So this
I didn't want to turn this into a counter argument.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
boring. That would make this episode so boring.
Yes.
Is if I just took notes on that and spent my whole time,
No doubt.
trying to refute each of those. No one's going to listen to that.
Yes,
I'm going to
absolutely.
queue it up on my phone as I drive back to town.
Absolutely.
After this, I have been waiting to listen to it, and Jackson's episode next week too.
Yeah,
So-
that's going to be so fun and fascinating. So Jimmy would believe that in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. That's everything that is and was created in that sort of massive. And then the second verse, now he's like forming, he's molding, he's shaping all that he's made. And that would include, so the sun and moon would be before day 1. So the sun and moon are already in existence, which I think, to me, fits really well with young Earth, because if the sun and moon are there before day 1, then day 1 would have morning, evening, and I've told Jimmy, hey, I think that's kind of a, 1 point against old Earth. He would see that differently. But would you, if the sun is created before day 1, do you think that fits pretty well with 24-hour days, morning and evening? The sun is actually rising and setting.
Well, and not just the sun and the moon, but the earth as well, because that thing's got to rotate.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a good point. So, and there would be, um, so yeah. So walk us through. Um, I mean, it would seem so in your mind. The Okay, day one. Then you have day two. Now you have like vegetation. You have, or maybe that's day three. Day two, you have day three. There's vegetation. There's plants. There's all the things. Day two, there's like this. The really the atmosphere is created. So what I think Old Earth would say is these were. We can look back in science and see these were very long, occurrences. As we look sort of like natural science, hey, these are very old events that have taken a long period of time. And so, what's your argument for? Well, hey, actually, these don't have to be long periods of time in how God. So, just kind of walk us through maybe the 5 or 6 days of creation and give us a case for why these don't have to be millions of years. Does that make sense?
I think so. And if I end up answering a completely different question, then let me know.
Absolutely.
But yeah, basically, I don't see why, number one, a god, a supernatural god, enacting a supernatural creation would have to rely on any natural means
Okay.
as we understand them. Long passages of time, uh, the sediment layers, rock formations that, supposedly take however long for that to happen, or for the atmosphere to reach its balance, and for there to be oxygen and moisture and all that stuff that the vegetation needs. Right? Vegetation needs moisture and it needs light. It
Okay.
has to photosynthesize.
Yeah.
Right. Um, so it needs air and it needs moisture and it needs sunlight. Um, if there wasn't any of that for a very, very long period of time, the plants would be in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
I would guess.
Yeah.
Um, I'm a farmer,
Yeah.
so I understand a little bit of agronomy, but I'm also not a very good farmer, so I don't understand very much agronomy.
Okay.
There's a reason I'm a professor, not a farmer. But anyway, so I think that's two arguments. Is that stuff doesn't need to take a very long time. We understand, with the current state of scientific consensus, that people accept that it takes a long time for these processes to work. Um, but that's natural. God is making the earth super naturally. We're also observing a lot of things changing uh, as they already exist. Nothing existed back then. Like God pulled all this stuff out of literally nothing.
Yeah.
He brought it into being. Matter
Yeah.
does not get created or destroyed. It simply changes forms. Well, God created matter.
Yeah.
Like he brought it into existence out of nothing. He didn't form it from something else.
Yeah.
And so, and point number three, God made time, so he's not constrained by time. I mean, he invented it. So in that sense, I know that's kind of a deflection, but still, it doesn't surprise me that something like that on was it day three you were saying?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Day two and day
Yeah.
three, I guess. That an all-powerful God could do that, not according to our schedule that our finite minds try to comprehend.
Yeah. Yeah.
This would not be the first time that God has surprised us by doing the impossible.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
it's
Could
not
you
the
give us?
last either.
Yeah. So you're referring to like miracles in the Bible that we see
Well, yeah,
God doing things that aren't normal means.
absolutely.
Yeah. So if I'm watching the movie of creation, this just kind of I'm trying to put in my brain. Um, I'm just imagining like if I'm watching the Old Earth movie, it's obviously things are
It's a
happening
long movie.
very slow. It's like the Titanic. It's like when's this gonna end? Um, or you have the Young Earth version. It's almost like when you watch a movie and it's like everything is like sped up super fast. So you see this. I'm just envisioning like just complete dirt field, and then all of a sudden there's just like everything's growing super fast, and now you have these giant trees and giant vegetation. Obviously, that's not how stuff grows now, right? Like you don't. We're both farmers. You plant a seed in the ground. you visit it weeks later and it's just barely popped up. You visit it weeks later and it's just, I mean, it's a whole season of growing that things get to where they need to be. So that's the natural way things grow.
Right.
And so would you envision, for instance, day 3, it's more of that supernatural, like the world is just bursting forth of vegetation is growing like it's never grown before, because almost God as like, a composer of a symphony is, just composing the creation and it's bursting forth in all of its glory and splendor. And when we go back and look at that, well, there's no way we can really explain how that happened, because it was God who did
Absolutely.
something very different. Is that where your mind kind of goes in these days?
Largely, yes. Is that if he's causing all these supernatural, if he's supernaturally causing things that were not all of a sudden to be, I don't know. I almost picture if everything comes into existence that rapidly, it would almost make a big bang noise. Frankly, I don't know what noise it made,
Yeah.
but I could envision it making a very loud
Yeah.
sound.
Yes.
But yeah, no, that's a good description of it. It says that God commanded the earth to bring forth vegetation. Interestingly enough, the earth listened and obeyed immediately. It didn't push back. It didn't say, "Well, now hold on."
Yeah.
Hold on a second. That I've never done that before. God, are you going to walk with me through this? Are you going to meet me on the other side?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it didn't protest one bit. It immediately obeyed what it was commanded to do, and it brought forth the vegetation.
Yeah.
Now, I will grant you, it doesn't say how long it took to bring forth the vegetation,
Yeah.
but it did.
Yeah. Yeah. And you take that as more of a boom. It's happening quickly and in the time span of a day, as what would seem to be clearly just reading in Scripture.
I
Yeah.
would.
Yeah, that's good. So in that, theologians will say the 6th day seemed to be a long day, and I think that's one strong case for old Earth. It's, hey, there's a lot going on day 6. Adam does a whole lot. God does a whole lot. This seems to be a very long 24 hour. This one took a while. So I'd love to hear your explanation of how all that happened on the 6th day could very well have been a normal sunset sunrise kind of a day.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And this is the one, I'll tell you what, I've gotten a lot of text over the last week. This is the one that people talk about the most.
Okay,
Interestingly
great.
enough. It's not the, God stretched out the universe on day 2, the heavens and all, no one's brought that up. It's day 6.
Okay.
And maybe that's because there's so much going on in day 6 that it's the most marvelous. The largest number of marvelous things done by a marvelous creator.
Yeah.
And it is indeed marvelous. And so what I would say, as far as, how, I'll take one example from day 6.
Okay.
Yes, a lot happened, but Adam naming the animals.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, there's a whole lot of animals out there. Come on.
Yeah.
How's he going to get that done in a day and have time left over for, to take a nap and for God to create woman and,
Yeah. I mean, I can't even visit all the animals at a zoo in a day.
a lot's going on here. Well, 3 counterpoints to that, very brief, is number 1, it doesn't say, I don't read it as saying every single animal on the earth.
Okay.
It says that, God brought the animals. In fact, depending on the translation, it might even say the animals there around the garden to him.
Okay.
And so that reduces the number.
Okay. And you're getting this from not Genesis 1, but Genesis 2. Would that be right? Where
Genesis
we're getting
2, where it's
more
explaining day
details.
6.
Here's what happened on day 6.
Yeah.
So just in case you're wondering, because I do get this question often, it's like somebody asked me this just a few days ago. Like, wow, Genesis 2 seems like a new creation. Like what? There's like now Adam's being formed from the dust and he's being breathed into, and now there's like a rib and a woman. And I thought man and woman were created on day 6. What is this? And if you are curious about that, that's yes. Genesis 1 is the overview of creation. Like he's given us the summary, And so when you see Genesis 1, 26 to 28, that's the summary of God making man in his image for his glory, male and female. Genesis 2, now we're getting really the garden scene where God is zooming in. He's giving us details on, okay, a lot happened on day 6, that he actually created man from the dust, breathed into his nostrils breath of life. He made woman from the man. He had Adam name all the animals. So when you're reading chapter 2, you're reading about what happened on day 6, and so
Well
that's
said.
where Jeffrey's kind of going to. So yeah, give us some more details about naming the animals.
Yeah, I'm glad you put that in there for sure. And as a brief aside, before I get back to the naming the animals, I read this part of Genesis almost like my favorite gospel, and that's the gospel according to Mark.
Okay.
And I didn't know how to read the Gospel of Mark quite the way I do now until your dad taught it a few years ago when we were going through it as a sermon series. And he has his phrase, a mark and sandwich.
Mm-hmm.
Mark will start a story and go a few verses in, hit pause,
Yeah.
tell another story, and finish it, and then hit play on the first story and then go through.
Yeah.
Genesis 1 is the overarching narrative, the summary, the abstract
Yeah.
to the creation narrative. And then there's almost a pause, almost. Not necessarily a hard stop.
Yeah.
But then chapter 2, it goes into day 6. Well, what happened on day 6? Where did man come from, etc.?
Yeah.
How did animals get their names? So I thought that was kind of an interesting parallel when I was rereading Genesis 1 and 2 over the past few weeks. Okay, so back to the animals. So, number 1, the animals in that area, God brought to Adam to see what he would call them, and that's what it was named. And on the same note, I almost read this the way we would read later on in Genesis with the account of Noah and the flood and the ark. And I know that's coming eventually, but it doesn't say God brought 2 of every animal, a male and female of every single animal in existence. It was of every kind of animal. Well, that reduces the number that he has to name even further. So the list is getting shorter and shorter. There was a second point. So it's a reduced number.
You talked about there's not necessarily every animal on the whole planet.
Right.
But this would be more of the garden scene. Would that be right?
Yeah, this is the garden scene.
The ones that are being named.
Actually, I had 3. Oh, well.
Well, you got time. People are probably like riding their bike or doing laundry or driving. So
No, it's all good.
if you're listening, Jeffrey is, fumbling through his notes to try to figure out we want it all. We'd like everything. So
I actually had this written down, but I thought, well, that's all right.
yeah.
Anyway, so let's say there's 2 points.
Okay, 2 points. I like that.
So number 1, the list isn't quite as long as we would think of, or I think there's a case to be made. Let me put it that way.
Yeah.
I'm not speaking authoritatively, just the way I read it, the way I understand it. The list of animals that he named is not quite as long as we would make it to be. Just remember the second point.
Okay.
It says that this is the task given to Adam, right? To see what he would call the animals, and whatever he called them, that's what its name was. It doesn't say he finished the task necessarily on that day. That was pointed out to me on Sunday in yet another one of the conversations about this. He began it, sure. Doesn't say he finished it on the same day.
Okay, so you're saying he didn't, God didn't say, and you have till sundown.
You have till sundown to name every single animal that I bring to you.
Gotcha.
Right. So it could have continued on.
Yeah, just
possibly.
like rule and keep the garden, till, cultivate.
Sure.
All those are tasks, but they're ongoing. They continue. And so that could have been very much he's doing this, he's starting the task, but he's not necessarily. This could be his whole 930 years or whatever.
Well, sure.
He's still naming animals even to his death. Like, hey, I haven't seen this one before. This one's going to be called this.
Well, precisely, because unless the Garden of Eden was next to the ocean, how could he have, seen sharks and whales and dolphins and so forth. Unless they were in the garden, I don't think they would have been.
Yeah,
But,
I mean there are some rivers,
I
so
guess there's
those
rivers.
would be interesting rivers. Great white shark. Okay.
Yeah, right there, right, swimming up by Eden, by the front gate. Anyway, so that's point number 2, and then point number 3 is that Adam probably had a lot of free time on his hands because Eve had not yet been created, and he had nothing better to do.
Yeah,
So
very true. Yeah, I like that. So talk to me about on the sixth day. He didn't just name the animals. We also have the creation of woman
yes,
and would you believe that's on the sixth day?
I
Like
believe so.
that 24 hours. So tell me a little bit about. Some would say, well, that had to take a little bit. What would you counter with? He's naming the animals. We have basically surgery, putting to sleep, waking up, and then I think even that thought of I've heard for the older Keith is like Adam says, "At last, this is bone." So it seems like that's a man. I've
Yeah,
been wandering around here for a long, long time, and at last, this is the one who's like me. So how in your mind, how could he also arrive at that at last moment if it's only been say 6 hours or 12 hours?
excellent question, and I have thought about that, and I will throw a word of caution with this interpretation, but we know from among others, but first on my mind is from Einstein. We know that time is relative, and so if Adam has only existed for a few hours, then that probably feels like a mighty long time because he hasn't lived through very many hours. And so that probably felt like a very long day. I think of kids, it feels like,
I was about to bring up my kids.
when is Christmas coming? This is the longest year ever. My goodness.
Yeah.
I am waiting forever till, I get Christmas presents. Then when you get to be our age and even older, it's like, oh, it's Christmas again.
Yeah.
It was just I just put the tree up in the attic.
Yes.
I got to get it back down again.
Yeah, that's a very
That
good point.
flies by. The older you get, the more years you live, the less significant on a percentage basis
Yeah.
they are to your mind and to your senses. And so if Adam's only been around for a few hours, there's almost that childlike appreciation of time.
Yeah, I like that. That reminds me of, my little girl who it was, Mimish was coming to get her in an hour. And
Probably a long hour
she
for her.
asked me 15 times that day, when's an hour? Has the hour? When she, it's like to her, the hour was literally, a week.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
babe, it's been 10 minutes. It's not an hour yet. So, yeah, that's a good point. So I could see where Adam, the at last would be, hey, to his relative short existence, man, things are going to. So I'd love to, now what I'd love to get into is, some of the science that seems to be just, outlandishly pointing towards an old Earth. And so, as best as you can, I would love to hear you push back a little bit on, well, I don't. So, I'm thinking for one, just when I go to I love national parks. Like it's one of my obsessions. I want to go to every single one of them. Just love national parks. I love seeing God's creation, God's beauty. Almost every national park that I go to, they will give me a case for why this part of the world is billions of years old, and here's how the Grand Canyon formed, and here's all the layers of the Grand Canyon, and this is why it's so and so old. And so it seems to be the Grand Tetons, the Smoky Mountains, all these different ranges, all these different things. They're all telling me this is why we believe the world is this old. So I would love for you to maybe just counter on when we dig in the soil and it seems like the world is really old, how could there also be good evidence that, well, we're maybe not looking at it correctly?
Well, yeah. This is definitely one of the weaker areas of science for me in terms of how much I've learned, how much I've read, and that sort of thing. Now I was really into fossils when I was a kid,
Okay.
and so I really appreciated that sort of thing. And I did read both sides of the argument.
Okay.
Was saying there's two primary mechanisms for how we have the fossil record the way it is, the sediment layers the way they are, and when you look at the layers in the Grand Canyon or at any of the national parks, where they explain, well, the base of this mountain is from this period and it's this old and so on and so forth. The two primary mechanisms for why you get what you get with looking at those layers would be either, yes, millions of years old, where layer after layer slowly forms and compresses down, or it had to happen in a flash. And I use that word somewhat intentionally.
Okay.
Almost like, I don't know, something really, really heavy and perhaps fluid and erosive and very forceful
Okay.
in a very short period of time.
Okay.
To
Like 150 days ish time.
I mean, now that you say it, that sounds about right.
Okay.
I don't know. But anyway, something to preserve things that got buried very, very quickly, start the calcification process or whatever it's called, fossilization. There we
Okay.
go. So those are the two primary mechanisms.
Okay.
And so one, they're mutually exclusive, of
Okay.
course. We cannot have instantaneous catastrophe forming these layers and these fossils and these records and whatever else. And also, they formed very slowly, took their time, and, this was a multi-million or billion-year process. So, one of those accounts is mentioned explicitly, I would argue, in the scriptures. One of those accounts is an estimate using approximation methods.
Okay.
Being an economist, I am all too familiar with approximation methods because we have to do almost all of what we do by observing.
Okay.
Which means you take the observational data, you perform statistical magic to it, and you get an estimate of what you think is supposed to be the result. But because it's an estimate, there's a degree of uncertainty. And oftentimes, the degree of uncertainty is very, 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 very large. So it could be that whatever methods they're using to date this fossil or this layer of the canyon or this sediment layer, whatever it is, they're dating it to be 10 million years old, give or take 9.9 million years.
Wow.
I mean,
Okay.
there's a pretty large margin of error there because, frankly, that's, again, an observational science. We can't replicate the last 150 million years in an experiment. We can't simulate lab conditions perfectly and verify it against the real world. We can create lab conditions that, speed up time, because that lab's probably not going to be around another 150 million years if I was guessing.
Probably.
And so if you can't replicate it via experiment, you have to work either with approximations or with theory. That's it.
Okay.
Experiments ruled out.
Okay.
If you're going to use theory, that's fine, but then you have to believe the theory, which means you have to accept the assumptions made by the theory. If you want to go the other route, empirically, you have to collect data and make approximations or estimates from the data. And again, if they're estimates, they're not exact. And if they're not exact, they have a degree of uncertainty. And oftentimes, those estimates have a very large degree of uncertainty.
So that's why Google says not the Earth is, but there's a little bit of wiggle room even in the Google answer.
Yeah.
That would be like, hey, there are. So, but I don't think that's the case. When I go to national parks and I hear geologists speak, that's not how they are speaking as this is pretty much fact. Would that be, how most people I think interpret that, hey, the Earth is this, this is pretty much the fact on how that is.
Well, for people who are coming to see the park and not listen to a 5-minute discourse about statistical methods, I'll bet you a nickel and a Coke someone just tuned out during my last 5-minute rant about uncertainty and error bounds and all that sort of thing. It's like, oh, great, the economist is talking now. So it sounds a lot better to just say, give them the high points. This is a family that drove 12 hours to get here. They want to see the rocks. They don't want to listen to you. So, get your spiel in. And if they ask, well, all right, maybe it is 50 million years old, the thing I'm looking at over there, that rock column. What's the margin of error on that? Okay, then you can go into the technical details. but that's not very good marketing to a society that has a short attention span.
Okay, I got you. So maybe that's a good question that I could ask next time. Hey, is there any margin of error in
Yeah,
this? Yeah, that'd be a good. I like that.
I would love to know what their answer is.
Yeah, that would be fascinating. So what I hear you saying is when we think about, a case for old Earth being, hey, it really matches better of what science shows or quote unquote proves. You're saying there's a lot of margin in even what scientists who are trying to do science because it's not replicatable. We can't observe it in its natural means that it happened. There's a lot of, would you say, guesswork in how we're doing that?
In geology, yes,
Okay.
definitely. In astrophysics, less so.
Okay. Yeah. So I want to get to, let's pin astrophysics for a second because I do
Sure.
want to get to the idea of like how far a planet is. There's light years. The world, the universe seems to be expanding. I want to get to some of that in a minute. But you also
Absolutely.
mentioned there's another way that you could get the Grand Canyon. There's another way. You alluded to it, but I would like
Yeah.
for you to give us that case for it's not something that happened a long time, but there was a flash of an event that happened that could also give us a similar outcome.
Well, something catastrophic and something a very powerful force to be reckoned with. Um, Now, I will say a lot of canyons and gulches and that sort of thing, those are a result of glacier erosion, but those didn't necessarily take a whole long time. Maybe a few years.
Okay.
One of my favorite parks is Turkey Run State Park in Indiana, and it's really cool. You can see where the glaciers during the last ice age made it down into central Indiana, like that far south, and they cut these canyons and moved these massive rocks the size of our church building. Um,
Wow.
it's so cool to see.
Wow.
But the argument is that ice age lasted a million years or whatever. Well, no, not quite, and yet it was still able to do that. And now that is not the Grand Canyon.
Yeah.
Let me just say, the canyon at Turkey Run State Park in Indiana is not the Grand Canyon. It's pretty impressive. Uh,
So if you're taking your family, don't hype it up too much.
don't hype it. It's beautiful, yeah, for sure. But don't oversell it for size,
Yeah.
if nothing else. But yeah, something massive, something catastrophic. If just a glacier, not to downplay glaciers, they're pretty cool. Did something like that, or Glacier Park.
I've got my Glacier National Park hat on.
Yeah, I just realized you had that on.
Yeah.
I was pointing at you as I made my point, but then lo and behold, there's your hat.
Yeah.
Glacier Park.
Like
Yeah, those are a force to be reckoned with. But what if there was a force to be reckoned with that covered the Earth?
mm,
Um, that seems pretty extreme because mountains are mighty big. The
mhm.
Earth is mighty big, and well, relative to us at
Yeah.
least. And so I think that's a case to be made for the biblical flood
Okay.
of laying down these layers and burying animals, plants, people
Yeah.
um, in a flash,
Mm.
really, really fast, covering them with mud, with rock, whatever, to stop the decay process in an instant because there's no elements, there's no oxygen causing the decay of whatever got buried. Like it is stuck. It's stuck there. It's
Okay.
going to be there. And so I think that's perfectly plausible.
Okay.
Because, yeah, like I said, the two main mechanisms is something catastrophic and forceful, or the millions of years each layer takes its sweet time and develops. Um, the flood is mentioned in the Bible, and it is from what, again, precious little I understand about that area of study. Um, it's plausible to say, looking at the fossil record, that is not inconsistent. No part of the fossil record, there we go, or the sediment layers or canyons or what have you, whatever you look at, none of that is sufficient to reject the theory that there was a worldwide flood.
That's good. Yeah. So I think I don't want to speak to like all people that hold to old Earth because I don't know what everyone believes in that camp. But I think it would be, from what I've heard, that some in old Earth would say, well, the flood was actually localized. It wasn't globalized. Like when Noah talks about, the world being flooded, it was his world, the world that he knew. It was locally, it wasn't globally. Um, and so what you would argue is no, there's actually a global flood covering the whole earth, and that would be an explanation for the fossil records that we have, and you know um, the Grand Tetons and the Grand Canyon.
I think so. Yeah, I think so. And not to mention, um, it's not special here in the Western Hemisphere. There's fossils and there's mountains and there's canyons and there's layers and whatever else all across the globe. And so if it only happened in Mesopotamia, the flood, um, well, first of all, if it only happened there, how would it have covered up, mountains? And it said, there was nothing that was not covered
Mm-hmm.
by the face of or not the face of the waters, but the flood waters, because God intended to do what He said He was going to do, and that was to destroy life and start afresh
Mm-hmm.
after the water went away.
Yeah, that's good. So now let's think about the stars, the planets. So I know there's a case to be made when we look through telescopes. Hey, man, there's a planet, and it is, I'll say, 10 million light years away. So the thought would be, well, if I look through the telescope and I can see it, and it is 10 million light years away, then it had to take 10 million years for that planet to get there, for light to come back here. So we can just sort of age the Earth based on how far we can see into space. We can measure light years, and we can know the Earth has to be at least this old. So I'd love for you to just speak to that, why that is not maybe the case.
Absolutely. Now, this one, I know a little bit more. I know enough to be dangerous. I'll put it that way.
That's me with biblical language.
Yeah, there you go. Um, and that is, I knew a little bit about how they measured large distances, and that is, using light reflection. The light waves from that heavenly body 20 billion light years away, or whatever. The something got interrupted, and then light waves make it back here. Wow. So if Earth stood perfectly still, and that thing that we detected stood perfectly still, and we got in a spaceship and we traveled at the speed of light, it would take us 20 billion years to get there.
Okay.
Okay. Well, the old Earth argument or the secular argument or whatever says, we've that thing had to be there for at least 20 billion years first, right? Doesn't necessarily mean the Earth was here for 20 billion years. If that thing was created before Earth, possibly. But my counter argument to that would be, the universe is expanding. Uh-huh. It's expanding. And I looked up, not to rest my case on Google, I actually looked at a few different sites on this. I started with Google and then, went from there, to NASA and so forth. How fast is the universe expanding? And because that struck me as, well, now hold on a second. If it takes us traveling at the speed of light 20 billion years to get there, what if we're not sitting perfectly still? What if it is moving in the opposite direction from Earth because the universe is expanding? I said, okay, well, how fast is it expanding? And I got a variety of answers, but a large number of them said it's expanding at a speed greater than the speed of light. So if that thing is racing away from us faster than the speed of light, and it takes light, supposedly, 20 billion years to get to us, it is entirely plausible that just a few thousand years ago, that thing wasn't 20 billion light years away, it was 1 light year away.
Mm.
But it is racing in the opposite direction away from us, and we're racing in the opposite direction away from it. Um, Now, I did have mental notes prepared. I'm not going to bore anybody, of what shape the universe is and what this expansion looks like.
Okay.
But that's the gist of my argument. Now, it's finite. It's very naive in a sense. And so if there's any astrophysicists listening to this and pulling their hair out, listening to me describe the universe in these terms, I am so sorry. But that is how I understand it is, okay, if the universe is expanding, that thing over there is going that way. This thing called Earth over here is going the opposite way. And this thing is getting scattered. That's almost biblical language as, God scattered or stretched out the heavens like a sheet. I think that's in Isaiah, actually.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Strangely enough, that was in part how Einstein described it. But anyway,
Yeah.
is it stretched out like the cosmic bed sheet or the celestial bed sheet. Anyway, so if that thing is stretching out at a speed faster than the speed of light, yeah, it probably is going to take light a while to get to us, but also at the same time, it used to be a whole lot closer because it had not traveled quite as far. So 20 billion years now to get there, traveling at the speed of light, may have just been 1 year traveling at the speed of light a few thousand years ago, because this thing is running away faster than light can go.
Yeah, it's like I'm at recess trying to catch a kid who's also running.
Exactly. Especially if they've got a head start, I know.
Yeah, it's a moving target. Yeah, I like that. So for me, when I try to read arguments of, well, this planet is 20 billion light years away, we can see that. That's just a really hard thing for my brain to comprehend. And for somebody to tell me, well, I've seen it through a telescope, I know this. Is there any way that we could also be looking through our telescopes and seeing and believing we're seeing this is 100% 20,000 years, 20 million years, light years away, but actually it could be a lot closer? Is there any, as you mentioned with the layers of rock, and there's all these variables,
like uncertainty,
is there any margin of error in how we look through our telescopes?
I wish I had a consistent answer on that, because I reworded my Google search about 5 times of, okay, if we're measuring great distances across the cosmos, I mean, what's the margin of error there? I could not get a consistent answer from anybody as far as margin of error on that. Now, I will say, physics is an experimental science, and that stuff can be replicated to a degree.
Okay.
But which, if with a perfect experiment, the margin of error would be 0. There wouldn't be any. I don't know if this falls into that category, and no matter how I worded my question for, all right, if something is 20 billion light years away, is that give or take a billion? Is that give or take 19.99 billion? Mm-hmm. Is there any margin of error there? I don't have a very good answer for that, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But given that physics is more of a fixed and experimentally driven and scientific method backed field of study, I would ascribe a smaller margin of error to those estimates, like 20 billion light years away, in which case, I have to have an answer for that, for the young Earth argument. And the best one I have right now is the kid at recess running away, the moving target.
Yeah. And I think too, maybe not, does the argument presuppose, okay, they started close together, and so in the creation of the heavens and earth, well, that planet that we see is 20 billion light years away. It could have actually started pretty close to there. Like when God stretched out the heavens, that could have been a very fast event where everything is stretched out, and now we're looking, well, that's this far away, therefore it has to be that old. Well, no, it started pretty far ahead. Like the kid at recess got a really far head start.
Exactly. Yeah, before it started taking off in the other direction.
Yeah. No, I think that's good. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, I love it. So what are, I know we're getting, we've chased a lot of rabbits around, which is what I love to do on podcast. So any other just things that you would like to, maybe like a lightning round of like, hey, I'm young Earth. This is what I think we've done. We've walked through the text. We've talked about, the fossil record, geology, astrophysics. We've talked about some things, and there's another side of that. Is there anything else you would like to share with our listener of like, hey, here's some other things? Because I think what I've enjoyed hearing people comment about the podcast from last week is, wow, man, Old Earth, that was fascinating, and it wasn't that like, oh, I'm angry or it can't be this way or it has to be this way. It was more like, man, I love thinking both of these, like, because God could have done it either one of these ways. Like, he could have
Absolutely.
done it in ages, and we see glory in that. He could have done it in like one moment, and there's glory in that.
Yeah.
So I think just one of the ideas of the podcast is like, hey, either place you land on this, man, God's glory is being magnified, and he is the creator of all creation. And
Absolutely.
so, is there any other things that you would like to share from a young Earth perspective on, hey, here's some reasons why I believe it's young Earth versus old Earth, or if we covered everything that you wanted to touch on today?
Well, yeah, I do have a lot, but I don't really want to have it all out there.
Okay.
I think we've actually covered a lot of the really high points, including some stuff that I didn't have in my notes, hence the flipping through the pages a moment ago or a while ago. But one of the central points, and honestly, this would be a good place to end my case for the young Earth argument or view, I guess, is I kept coming back to what did Jesus say? What were Jesus's teachings? What would he have said about that? And yeah, there's a number of passages. There's Mark 10, there's Luke 11, where Jesus says, God created them male and female from the beginning, and so he puts the creation of Adam and Eve at the beginning, not a very long time after the beginning.
Okay.
He refers to them in the language of, yeah, they were there too.
Okay.
They were there at the start. That's Mark 10. And then Luke 11, he also places Cain and Abel at the beginning, talking about, the blood of Abel and the prophets, or blood of the prophets and Abel from the foundation of the world, from the blood of Abel. And so if Abel and Cain and Abel were there right close to the beginning as well, that's a very curious phrasing that Jesus talked about there. But, Jesus did not say, all right, everyone sit down, listen, here's the deal.
Yeah.
I was there. I saw it. It was made by me, through me, for me, but
Yeah.
Paul's, whatever that word is, benediction.
Yeah. Yeah.
in Romans. He didn't say that. He didn't need to. But he was there, and that was the language he used in referring to the beginning, was putting the people, humanity. Like you said at the very beginning, there's not much question about the age of man necessarily. It's about the age of the earth. Well, Jesus's phrasing, as I read it, strongly implies that the beginning of man was right there at the beginning of the earth. Depending on how you read into that, obviously, I reserve the right to be wrong.
Yeah.
To be completely wrong. I'm used to it, frankly. Yeah. And so that was one thing was, read what Jesus says. His words are precious, and we need them every day.
Absolutely.
So that was point number one. And then point number two, increasingly, my favorite verse is Deuteronomy 29:29.
Ooh, I love that. The secret things belong to the Lord.
The secret things belong to the Lord, but anything he's revealed, that's ours.
They belong to us.
It belongs to us and our kids forever.
Yeah.
Well, he has revealed a whole lot, and I don't think we're going to exhaustively learn everything that he has revealed so that we run out of stuff to study.
Yeah.
We've got plenty else, more important things to keep us occupied in the meantime. And if we master all of that before we die, then we can, continue chasing these rabbits. But it's fun to do.
Yeah.
It's fun to do nonetheless. But the older I get, the more I learn. And the more I learn, the more I have learned how much I have yet to learn.
Absolutely.
More stuff gets uncovered, and I'm like, oh, I thought I was making progress, and now it's just opening up a new door of stuff that I don't know. It's
Yeah.
stuff I didn't know I didn't know.
Yeah.
And and then back to the words of Jesus, he was there at the beginning, and Jesus was revealed to us, right? That's not a secret thing anymore, right? The Messiah had not yet come when Moses penned Genesis 1 and 2,
Yeah.
and all that he wrote. So that was still a secret thing. It was the mystery of Christ, as Paul refers to it in the New Testament. But he has been revealed to us now, and we have his words written for us. We have the Bible, and I love, depending on what you read into Genesis 1 especially, but also Genesis 2, depending on how you read into it, I love seeing the gospel parallels, and I would say that is the biggest benefit. I've had a blast being on the podcast, by the way.
Yeah. It's been so fun.
But another benefit, and I would say possibly even a bigger one, is I was compelled to reread Genesis 1 and 2 and to spend more time in Scripture. And I hope that's what our listeners do after listening to this, is that they feel a renewed zeal to go read their Bibles with this and to love their Bibles. And the gospel parallels and the creation narrative, like I was saying, it's beautiful to see. This is not the last time God is going to look on something of his with joy and say, it is very good. Or you could retranslate that, I am well pleased.
Amen.
So it's great.
Yeah, that's good.
It's great reading through
I
this.
think what's
whatever
cool.
side you come
Yeah,
from.
I've never even. I haven't thought of this. Is one reason I love doing podcasts. When you're just thinking and talking, one thought that just hit me is, we hear about the first creation, obviously in Genesis 1 and 2, and we can speculate the when and the how. But it just dawned on me, as God's new creations, we're going to get to see him do new creation.
That's right.
Like, that's going to be,
We'll see it this
we're
time.
going to see it and watch him, melt the old and make the new. And that's going to be spectacular. And so, just kind of hit me that, hey, we're speculating on what happened back then, but we're going to get to see him make the new one. And that's going to be pretty amazing.
I'm excited.
Yes. Yeah. Well, Jeffrey, this has been so much fun. I hope, as the listener, you've by now seen what the point of these two podcasts are. They're not to try to make two arguments and then convince you of one or the other. It's to try to say, hey, when we look at things like creation, there are things we must agree on as believers. For instance, the who of creation. Like, we are all in agreement. God created the cosmos. He made everything out of nothing. We're in agreement that he made human beings uniquely in his image. We know why he made the world, ultimately for his glory and for our good. We are all agreeing on those things. But there are a few things of the how exactly he did this and exactly when, how long did it take. There is room for interpretation, there's room for disagreement, and what we hope you'll do in these two podcasts, and then also in the next one when we hear from church history, that you'll just marvel at God our creator. And I think where I've landed on both of these, like young earth, old earth, I'm like middle earth. I think that's where my official position is. And I might dive into that a little bit more at some point into the future. But yeah, it's been fascinating just to look at, hey, both have very good points. Both have very strong arguments for this and for that. And I really think both are very respectable positions in the Christian community. So whether you believe, hey, God did it in 6,000 years or 4.5 billion years, God did it. He did it for his glory. We are his crown jewel of creation. We're made in his image. Through Christ, we're remade in his image. And one day that image is going to be resurrected, and we're going to live with him in a new creation forever. And so I hope as a listener in both of these episodes, you have marveled over God who is creator. And what we can do is look at his word, his special revelation. We can look at his world, his general revelation, and we can just marvel at God who made all of this. And so that's pretty amazing. So, Jeffrey, thank you so much for coming on and giving a case for young earth. Hopefully, as a listener, you found this fascinating. And our prayer, I know Jeffrey said it many times, that this conversation helps you love your Bible. Because, man, when you love your Bible, you will love God, serve people, and live a life